The next thing we're going to tackle in Adobe Illustrator is perspective drawing, and today we're just going to get used to some of the things that go along with perspective drawing in Adobe Illustrator, and we'll be working on something kind of like this, where you're going to draw 6 boxes. They have some perspective to them. It's what's called 2-point perspective. And let me kind of diagram out a couple of things here. I'll just use a paintbrush to do this with some red paint and see if I can make that work. And that's not red, but that's okay. Maybe I got it to go red. No, I did not. That's okay. Doesn't matter. All right, now, when you work with 2-point perspective, and some of you may remember this from some art classes or whatever, perspective drawing always kind of has what's called a vanishing point, but when you're working with 2-point perspective, you generally have 2 vanishing points, and in this case, they're way over, like even off the artboard here. All right, everything on this, like if we were to divide this artboard right down the middle, everything on this left side is kind of slanting off and disappearing off toward this vanishing point over here. Everything on the right side is slanting off and angling off toward this vanishing point over here. And if you were to draw a line right smack through the middle of this artboard, that would be the horizon line. And you'll notice that this horizon line kind of makes a difference. On the boxes that are below the horizon line down here, you can see the top of the box, right? But you can't see the bottom because it's kind of as if you're up higher and looking down on the box. These boxes that are up here above the horizon line, you can see the bottom, but you can't see the top because it's kind of like you're below the box and you're looking up at it. Now these boxes that are kind of laying right on the horizon line, you can see the sides and you can see the ends of the boxes, but you can't see the top and you can't see the bottom. And because if you think of it, they're kind of at eye level. So what we're going to be doing today is just getting used to the perspective controls in Adobe Illustrator and how they work, and we're just drawing some boxes like this. Now we're going to get more fancy later on, but to begin with, we'll start simple. All right, so you'll start this off with a clean, empty artboard. Just make a new artboard, and I would recommend that you make it in landscape orientation. You can do that with File and New. And then right here on the orientation, I would recommend you do this with this second one, the second button, the one to the right, the landscape orientation. I'm going to cancel that because I already have a new artboard. All right, now the first thing you're going to need is what's called the perspective grid. And the fast way to get this turned on is to, on your keyboard, just to go Control-Shift-I, all 3 keys at the same time, Control-Shift-I. And that turns on what's called the perspective grid. It also puts this little widget thing right up here on the artboard, and you're going to wind up needing that. You're going to use that. Let me take off that arrow. But here's the things I was talking about earlier. There's a vanishing point here. There's a vanishing point here. The horizon line right across the middle, and you can even see this kind of dividing line that cuts it right in half right down the middle here. So those are all important things in working with perspective drawing. Now remember, what we want to do is we want to draw 3 boxes on to the left. It would be to the left of this line right here, this line that just divides it right down the middle. 3 boxes to the left, 3 boxes to the right, and we're going to do one above the horizon line, one right on the horizon line, and one below the horizon line. And we'll do the same thing over here, above, right on it, and below it. All right, well, let's go to work on that. And on the first couple, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it picks up speed. Take off all those things that I put on there. All right. Now, I'm going to use the rectangle tool to draw the, like the faces, the edges of these boxes, whatever you want to call them. Think of them like cardboard boxes that have a top and a bottom and sides and all that, and ends. And this little widget that you see up here in the corner is very important. All right, this tells Illustrator which one of these grids that you're looking at to draw on. If you click on the blue one and you draw a rectangle, it's going to draw right there in perspective. And let me fill that up with something so you can see it better. It's going to kind of draw it right on that left grid, that blue grid. But if I come over here and I click on the right grid, which looks orange, all right, I guess the best way to say it is it's orange, and then you take the rectangle tool and you draw a box over here with that right grid activated, then it lines it up with that right grid like that. Okay, And then if you need a top or a bottom of a box, you click on the bottom of this cube that's on the widget up here, and that draws on the horizontal grid, and it makes like box bottoms or box tops, like that. And they're all kind of in perspective, slanting off toward those two vanishing points. All right, and you just have to pay attention. You have to really kind of watch which grid you have active on this little widget that's over here. All right, so I'm going to take all those off and then actually go to work on what I want this to look like. Now, the colors of your boxes are up to you. You can, it doesn't really matter, but I do want you to make boxes similar to what I'm making today. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start this off with the rectangle tool. I've got the blue grid active, and for my one that is above the horizon line, I'm just going to draw, this is like the side of the box right here. Fabulous. Now, it is probably a good idea to fill it up with something here, which you can do. You could double click down here and pick a color. All right, there we go. Or you could do it up here on the option bar that goes across the top. It doesn't really matter that much. Now, for the end of this box, again, you got to kind of think of it as like a cardboard box. The end of this box is going to be lined up with the orange grid. So I'm going to click on the right grid, the orange grid, take the rectangle tool, and I want to match this up as best I can. So I'm going to click and drag. And how big and how deep and how wide you make them is really kind of up to you. I'm going to drag that out. If it would help you to change the colors of things so you can kind of see how they're fitting better, you're certainly welcome to do that. You can do that. That's up to you. All right, so again, if you're kind of using your perspective brain here, you can see how I've got a side and an end, but I need a bottom on this box. All right, well, for the bottom, I need the rectangle tool and I need the horizontal grid. Anytime you're going to do a top or a bottom of a box, you need that horizontal grid. And what I want to do is this needs to match up right from this corner to this corner right here, and it even kind of helps you match it up a little bit. And like I said, what you do with color is up to you. I could change the colors of those in any manner that I wanted to, but that actually looks pretty good to me. I think I'll just go with that. Now, if you are a stickler for detail, I want to show you something here, and then I'm going to try to pick up the pace. These little corners, and I'm even going to use the zoom tool and zoom in even tighter. The corner of that box is real pointy and it doesn't match up very well. If you come way over here to the right to the stroke panel, and if you look at the corner setting here, you can round those corners off a little bit. You have to select it first. I don't have it selected. You just have to make sure that it's selected, and you can round those corners off a little bit, and you could do that on each one of the boxes that you drew. You could round the corners off a little bit. See, I selected the green box and rounded the corners, the blue box and rounded the corners, and that does make it look a little bit easier. I'm going to zoom back, or a little bit better. I'm going to zoom back out there, but that's a detail that, if you're one of those people that really gets tied up in detail, then do that, but it's up to you. All right, let's keep moving here. I'm going to do another rectangle, and this one's going to kind of lay right on the horizon line, right on that middle line. So this one doesn't need a top or a bottom. I'm just going to stretch out. That's like the side of a cardboard box. Then I'll click on the right grid here and get another rectangle going. And make that, you make it as thick as you want to make it. And again, like I said, if you want to change the color of things so that you can kind of see how they're matching up or how they're looking a little bit better, feel free to do so. All right, now I'm down to the last one that's on the left side of the artboard. All right, I'll use the left grid and I'll draw, and this one's got to be below. I don't exactly really like where I got that one. That's better. All right, below the horizon line. All right, so I'll start with that. Good. All right, so that's on the left grid. Now I'm going to switch to the right grid up here on this little widget, and I'll draw the part of the box that will be like the end of the box. You just got to match it up as best you can here. Okay, and again, color's really up to you, but do what you want. And then this needs a top. This box needs a top. So again, I'm going to take the rectangle tool, and even though on this widget on the cube it looks like it's the bottom of the box, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a top or a bottom of a box, you still need that horizontal grid. So I'm going to click here and drag that and just match up those corners as best I can, and there we have my third box. Okay, now I'm going to go to work on the ones that are going to go on the other side here, and again going to pick up speed a little bit. It's the same process, but it's kind of the opposite order a little bit. I'm going to use the right grid, and I'll draw a kind of a side of a long box. I'll take the left grid, and I'll draw the end of that box. Use your guides there to match them up. I use the horizontal grid to draw the bottom of that box. And there we go. When you get done, I'll show you that you can turn the grid off and you'll be able to see these boxes a little bit better. All right, my next one is going to be right on the horizon line. So I'm going to start off just with the right grid active, and I'll just kind of split the horizon line kind of like that. It only needs a side and an end of the box. So for the end of the box, I go to the left grid, and I'll take the rectangle tool and I'll draw that in. Just clicking and dragging and drawing it in. All right, and just for kicks, I'll change the color of that one. And I only have, that's all that one needs. Can't see the top or the bottom of that box, so I need one more. I got one more to go. All right, back to the rectangle tool. I'll click the right grid and drag out my side of my box here. There we go. And I'll click the left grid and I'll drag out the end of my box here. Try to match that up as best I can. Sometimes those little help boxes you see, they're telling you width and height, that kind of get in your way a little bit. And then this one needs a top. All right, it's going to be kind of a long skinny box, but it needs a top. And even though it's a top, I'm going to click that horizontal grid and use the rectangle tool and stretch it out like that, match it up. All right, so there we go. I've got all the faces drawn in there for those 6 boxes. Now, if I want to turn the grid off, again, the keyboard shortcut I'm using here is Control-Shift-I, and that turns the grid off and on. You'll want to get used to that. Control-Shift-I turns the grid on, Control-Shift-I turns the grid off. And now what I've got here is my 6 boxes that are in perspective. They're in 2-point perspective. They're just kind of floating right now, but we're going to get fancier as we go. All right, so you would just need to save this. You would do save as and save it on your network drive. Just call it boxes. All right, that's good enough. Just call it boxes, and save it on your network drive, and then drag it and drop it into your turn-in folder on drive L. And that, folks, is the end of session number 21.